How y'all doing? I'm Hoyt.
And I'm Corey.
And today we're talking to Kevin Sekhani. Kevin's a local recording artist, been hanging around for quite some time, and he's going to visit with us to tell us about his experience.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Where'd you start, Kevin?
I started, the start of it was when I heard, there's always been music. There was always music in my house as a kid. And at the time, it was just, you just hear it and it doesn't really register. It's just like ingrained in you. But then when you get a little older, I guess the first time that I really noticed something was when I heard Fame by David Bowie. Mm-hmm. And it made me feel really odd in a way. We're going, what is this? And then you'd see bands on TV, like you'd see the Beatles, you'd see, oddly enough, the Bay City Rollers. Was as a kid seeing those guys on TV, you're like, oh, guys playing instruments. So it was just a magical thing. These guys just show up and then they make music. So that is when I heard those things and saw those things, it started to get the wheels turning. Oh, I want to do that, but I don't know how to do that. Yeah. What you have to do to be the chosen guy or guys or girls, whatever, to do that. So, that pretty much when I was a small kid, is when I started to have an interest in what was going on with recorded sounds and bands performing. Yeah. So it was just about figuring out how to do that, well, do I need a manager? What do you do?
Process.
It's just the process. So that's pretty much where it started and how it started and why it started, because I wanted to do those things that, those feelings that I got listening to some of those recording artists. I wanted to contribute to that. I wanted to make music that maybe did the same thing for someone like myself.
Oh, besides Bowie, who are your influences?
Ooh, it's all over the map. It's a crazy thing. I like tons of things. I like certain rap things. I like country and western music. I like specifically the traditional, Waylon, Cash, I like Jerry Lee Lewis. I like the guys that infuse country with rock. You got Jerry Lee Lewis. So it's really all over the place. I like hard rock. I like metal. I like there's some jazz I like. It's just basically there's a thing I'm looking for. There's an energy I'm looking for, and I can get it with every genre of music. Yeah. And so that's it's all over the place. For my pop thing, I want the Beatles. Yeah. For my rock thing, No Better Than the Stones, So it's just that kind of deal.
Oh yeah, yeah. What about your previous album? I know you have a few records out.
I've done a few records. I've done the funny thing is that there's a lot of records that have been done that have never come out. Yeah. And that'll be the kind of thing I always joke that, whenever my time on Earth's done, I've got a couple people that know where all of them are. So it's like, do something with them, if there's I'm sure not a demand for it, but I'd like to at least get it out. Yeah. But so there's been quite a few. I've been in quite a few bands. Bands like the Radio Thieves, 2 Minute Sinatra was a band that actually had a record deal out. They put a record out. We actually had a little hit with one of the songs, Chemical, on that, and that was probably late 90s. Yeah. And then most recently, the Mercy Brothers. I was a member of the Mercy Brothers with Mark Moe of the Blue Runners. He and I had a band called the Mercy Brothers, and we did some really cool things. Put out a record, got to tour overseas. And then my last record, Day Ain't Done, was another one that was on Louisiana Red Hot Records. And that came out and toured that and did all the stuff you're supposed to do for that record. And so, yeah, there's quite a few records, either out or not out, There's actually a new one done that's waiting for a release date. So it'll be sometime this year that'll come out.
Cool.
Spencer Gibb produced it, and Spencer's an incredible artist. Yeah. Spencer comes from a incredible musical family. He's a Gibb. He's Robin's son.
A Gibb?
Yeah, from the Bee Gees.
Bee Gees? You ever heard of the Bee Gees?
Oh, yeah.
A few people have heard of them. So Spencer's a tremendous talent, and he produced an incredible record that I'm excited about. And he's got a fabulous record called Let's Start Over. And you guys need to check that out. You can get it on all the streaming and iTunes and however, you get digital music these days.
Yeah.
And also on his website, SpencerGibb.com,
Mm-hmm.
he's got the vinyl, which I love because I'm an
wow.
old school guy,
Oh, yeah.
you got to have it on vinyl.
Vinyl's coming back.
It is coming back. My last
coming back.
record is actually on vinyl,
Yeah.
and that's a pretty amazing thing.
Is that the one with the track you sent us? Work
yeah,
Ain't Done?
Yeah, Day Ain't Done, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
what's Work Ain't Done about?
Well, that that was a song that was about, when you're in South Louisiana, you see all of the really cool things we have to offer, whether it be, the food, the party time, even the work. Even the work is unique.
Yeah.
And basically that song's about how they burned down the sugarcane fields. And growing up, we'd know it as just typical
Yeah.
stuff we see, but everywhere else, there's a lot of people that don't know what that is.
They
And
start
so it's
freaking out.
basically that.
If you're from California, you go in a panic mode and you see.
You see fields burning, and you're like, what's going on? But that song touches on burning the sugarcane fields down. It's about, it's an ode to the hardworking the South Louisiana folks that do that. And there's a song on that record called Oilfield Tan,
Yeah.
which is about all the oil field workers. I mean, I had a whole family full of
I
them.
was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's on that record.
Mm-hmm.
And that record was an ode to South Louisiana and the people, the culture. Wasn't a Cajun record, though it had some Cajun influence to it.
Yeah.
It's not a country record, though there's some of that influence on there. But it's a combination, a conglomerate
And
of.
the name of that record was
They Ain't Done.
They Ain't Done.
Yep.
Was the name of the record? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I seem
Remember
to.
you gave me the CD.
Yeah. When it came out.
Yeah.
That's right.
And but I was telling Corey about it. I was talking about They Ain't Done and Oilfield thing.
Oilfield Tan.
Uh,
Funny story about Oilfield Tan is that I've played that song all over the United States, and the chorus talks about there's a line about PHI in it,
Yeah.
and you can always tell the Louisiana people in the crowd when you mention the PHI line, everybody. Well, I know that, and then there, you've got some oil field, offshore workers right there because you got to take your PHI to your oil derrick.
Oh
or
yeah.
to your,
Got to fly
rig.
the helicopters out.
That's right.
Yeah. And an interesting story, the man that was in A Star Is Born, the second one,
Yeah.
and of course he also wrote songs. Chris Christopherson.
Yeah.
Was a PHI pilot.
He was a pilot. He was in Baton Rouge whenever he wrote Bobby McGee.
Yeah.
And that's how that actually came about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
So we're talking about Louisiana and culture. What's your favorite Louisiana dish?
Oh, well, I get picked on a lot for being a bad Cajun because I'm not a seafood eater.
Yeah.
So I know my friends.
Me too.
So I get it really bad, But I mean,
sure.
I love any of the blackened chicken. I mean, any of that stuff. I'm completely down with. I like jambalaya and gumbo. I mean, I'm
Red beans and rice.
not as much of a red beans and rice fan as the food, but love the band. Red Beans and Rice Review were a fantastic band.
Yeah.
But so I mean, it's kind of weird. I mean, spending all the time. I lived in Austin for 20 some odd years, and the funny thing is I'm more of a Tex-Mex person.
Yeah.
Which,
I like some Tex-Mex too. Fortunately, likes me too much too.
well, yeah. I mean, it's good, but there's some Cajun stuff here. There's some Cajun food here that I enjoy.
And what's your other interests besides music and Louisiana Tex-Mex food?
That's pretty much it. I mean, music is pretty much it. If I'm not playing it or writing it or recording it or whatever, I'm listening to it. Lately, I've really stepped up my vinyl collection.
Mm-hmm.
I've had records all through my lifetime that are a great way. To me, the only way to listen to it, to music. Mm-hmm. So I've started to really up my collection again.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I mean, I like sports.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy football, basketball, baseball.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. I liked to play football when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty fond of that.
Yeah.
And right now, being a dad's been my pastime and my job and all the other things.
Sure.
Following a daughter that's a pretty creative person herself.
Up and coming actress.
She's doing some acting. Yep, she's
great.
She's in Addams Family currently.
Yeah.
Playing Wednesday Addams, and
Neat.
so it's cool trying to keep up with her.
We're gonna have to have her on.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, she's an
for
interesting
sure.
kid.
Yeah.
Really, really smart girl.
What are the big shows or anything that you've done or played around in?
Man, I've done some really cool shows over the years. Like anybody that's done this a while, you've done some great shows. You've done some terrible shows. The great thing about the terrible shows is as time goes by, they become great because they become great stories,
Yeah.
So we've had some, Austin was a really amazing experience because I got a front row seat to some amazing guys that I looked up to, that I admired.
That's great.
And got to play with some of them on stage. I've got to record with some of them.
Yeah.
It's an amazing feeling when you step on stage with a band that consists of Bill Carter, who's a tremendous songwriter, and he's got Chris Layton, who played drums for Stevie Ray Vaughan. And you've got David Grissom, who played guitar for John Mellencamp, and you've got Charlie Sexton on the other side, who plays guitar currently for Bob Dylan. And there's, unlike any feeling in the world, Mercy Brothers, I got that buzz, that buzz playing with the Mercy Brothers. And other bands as well. But, when you're playing with guys on that level, you always want to be the weakest link in the band.
Yeah.
We'll be back with you in just a minute.
We back talking with Kevin Sekhani. Kevin, you wanted to tell us some more about an upcoming local actress that we might want to have on the show?
Well, yeah. My daughter Carlin has done quite a bit of acting and singing. As a matter of fact, when we played Festival International a few years back, she was with the band and played the first 5 songs with us.
Oh, she sings too?
Yeah. She sings as well.
Maybe Dad and
daughter
need to come back and
we need to do a couple of songs. Yeah, it's fun.
Does she do theater or?
She does that.
Yeah.
Yep. She does musical theater. She does. She's done some other film, other theater, other performances that are not musical. So
cool.
She's into it. But right now she's kind of focusing on school. She wants to get that focused as much as possible, and which is all possible. I mean, we tell her, have fun. So she chose this one to do, and it's been fun. It's always fun watching her.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Has faith ever played a role in your career along the way? Or?
Well, the only time that it's been in the forefront was the Mercy Brothers.
Yeah.
The Mercy Brothers were like a real high octane gospel sort of thing, done at a punk rock speed.
Yeah.
It was like a tent revival.
Yeah.
And being that most of us were, Cradle Catholics in that band, we knew the material. We wrote a lot of the material. At first, we were going to just do old traditional songs in a real amplified, souped-up sort of way.
Yeah.
But once we got into it, we started writing these songs, and we realized that, wow, we kind of know about this,
Yeah.
So we did that stuff, and I mean, it was interesting because there were a lot of folks that would come to the shows that would come up to us and tell us they had a moment, and it was never for us to say or do. We weren't trying to preach or any of that, because I mean, I've tried to not preach, in my art that I put out to people,
Well, it opens a lot of doors.
Yeah.
That some doors that should be open and some that
that
shouldn't.
shouldn't.
I mean,
Sure.
you look at what the latest round of stuff Lauren Daigle has gone through.
But I heard that Lauren, the latest I heard on Lauren is that she's now moving away from being classified as a contemporary Christian artist, because the interesting thing is when the Mercies were looking at record deals, there were a lot of record companies that loved it and said, well, is this a shtick, or how is this going to be 3 records down the road? Because when they make investments in that kind of deal, they want to think about the biggest possible net that they can cast. And I understand. I mean, for me, it was never a matter of being upset one way or the other. I did understand that, people may or may not tire of it. You want the most possible potential of grabbing and building a fan base. And, and that's what we always said in the Mercy Brothers. The Mercy Brothers, I always said live during the opening number that we were not, this is not a political affiliation. This is not a religious affiliation. This is a one thing. This is about us being one, whether we agree or disagree. We want to make sure that if we're preaching anything, it's let's work together.
Well, my experience years in the music business was, like you say, I knew a lot of guys who were religious. And their music was very religious, especially if you understood what they write songs about. But they were always overtly scared, or
they were skeptical about putting it out there.
Because they didn't want to be, ostracized by one market or the other.
Two interesting examples of that. You've got Jeff Pollard, the original singer of LaRue, who ended up being up against a minister. And left the business completely. And then you've got U2, who your mind would be blown if you knew how many of their songs were about their faith. And they don't sound anything
almost
like
all of them.
Almost all of them. And I mean specifically. And a lot of people say, and there's a tremendous market. I've seen, I have a friend of mine that photographs artists and bands in Texas, and one thing he does is he does a lot of that Christian circuit, and there are hundreds of bands that play this tremendous circuit, and they're very vocal, and they're not ashamed to say, or they're not skeptical about their intentions. But their music reflects it, and then and sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's kind of hokey, it just depends. But U2, and some people think sometimes their music's great, sometimes it's hokey, some people hate it. But the interesting thing about them is you'd never really know. I mean, they're good Catholic Irish boys, but aside from that, their music is very cutting edge. It's you would never know unless you were in the know that most of it is about their faith.
And you see that a lot in bands, and when they play, again, they're afraid to come out and say, and then some of them are not so afraid to come out and say, kind of thing. And I've seen what happens to a lot of guys that get ostracized, but then you got the guys who are just too big to where it doesn't matter. Like the U2s, they'll come out and say it, and so what, kind of thing.
Well, and the interesting thing is through that whole Mercy Brothers process is that we really enjoyed the aspect of like the Johnny Cash, like when Johnny Cash would deliver the message, and sing, spiritual songs, there was a bit of fear when Johnny Cash is singing it, or Hank Williams, I Saw the Light. I mean, you feel it a whole lot differently
Yeah.
when guys like that served it up and delivered it to you.
Yeah.
And that's because they to me understood the concept of, you can't have Jesus without the devil.
Yeah.
And so they sang about both.
Yeah.
And they the way they mixed their whole message of those songs was very profound.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, think about it. I mean, what was the 60s and 70s, and with Hank Williams even further back than that.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing. It's been done for as long as they've been recording music, and as long I'm sure there's been some caveman, that was banging on a rock and it with a stick that was pushing his spirituality. It's
Sure.
somehow,
Yeah.
Well, I've never understood how always how music has been portrayed or always judged as spiritual or not spiritual kind of thing, and I kind of get the whole vibe of that. But how sometimes in religious circles they'll hold musicians to a different what's the word I'm looking for?
It's like a different standard.
A different standard
Yeah.
than the
Sure.
oil field worker.
Well, sure.
Or the grocery store owner
Sure.
and those type of people.
Well, the oil field worker, or the grocery store worker is doing just as rock and roll stuff as the rock and roll guy.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just I mean, it's all, we're all people,
Yeah.
we're all fallible people, I mean, and so we're all gonna, it's gonna run the same line, you know.
Most
Just
definitely.
the rockers have a little bit more access to the to the dark
Yeah.
stuff,
Do you have any shows coming up? Are you doing any shows?
No,
right now?
I haven't done many shows lately. After the break, I'll kind of go into a little bit of why that is. It's interesting, I mean, it's an interesting time for me as a artist at my age, and you want to reinvent who you are and what it is you do and why you do it and how you do it.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, we'll talk about that. Y'all just hang out like a hare and a biscuit. We'll be right back. All right, we're back with Kevin Sekhani. I know Kevin a while. I like his name. I always tell him that. But,
I like your name,
Kevin. You were going to tell us about why you hadn't been playing a lot of shows and why you're.
Well, it's interesting. I've been doing this since the late '80s, pushing hard. And there came a time when I was doing the last
You're
record.
only 22 years old.
Only
right?
22, but I mean, when you do rock and roll, you can teleport. Back and forth. So I was tired. I'm just exhausted. And when I did the last record, by the end of the touring cycle of that record, I said, my daughter's starting high school and everything. I was like, I kind of want to be around because I don't want to miss any of that.
Yeah.
Or as little of that as I can possibly miss. So I pulled off the road. It was a weird time. It's been a weird time lately, just in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know what? I want to see if I'm empty or if I just need to recharge my batteries. And I realized that, I still want to do this, but I want to do it differently than I've done it in the past. In the past, the way you do it is you make recordings, if you're so lucky to do it, and get your resources set up to do it. Then you go and play. And then half the time while you're playing, you're making another one.
Yeah.
Or at the end of that cycle, you make another one. And then you still play. And that's breakneck pace. And it's exhausting.
So you're going through music pause. Hot flashes.
Yeah, that whole thing. That whole thing. And plus, I'm old school. I remember when your favorite band put out a record, they did a tour, You went to the tour. You got the record.
Bought the T-shirt.
You bought the T-shirt.
Yeah.
You know, you went to another state to see him do the same tour,
Yeah.
and then when it ended, they disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't. Are they still a band? Are they still an artist? Are they still making music? And then the press release comes out. Oh, there's a new record coming out. Well, they look different. Oh, that's a different sound. You know, that's kind of that to me, that was the magic
Yeah.
of those days. Like when you'd see your favorite, like, oh, you know, any band as an example you could use. So I was talking to the label that I'm with, Louisiana Red Hot Records, great label, great people, great roster. And I said, you know, I kind of want to do it old school where I just disappear and figure out what the next step is.
Yeah.
And the next step does not involve a cowboy hat. I can say that. I can say that much.
We kind of like the cowboy.
Well, the cowboy hat was all right.
Maybe,
It's nice.
maybe get an oil field cowboy hat just to beat up a little bit.
Right.
You know?
Right. But you know, we agreed. You know, we agreed that, you know, that was part of the magic that I enjoyed, is that you can go away. You know, 'cause bands are afraid of losing the momentum or the fan base that they built, because you know how people's attention spans are these days. It's a 30-second attention span. And I'm willing to sacrifice that and rebuild, you know. One of the coolest things that I've ever heard was that, and it was in reference to David Bowie. He didn't say this, but someone referenced it and said that David Bowie was always willing to lose his entire fan base with his next project because he wanted to push his art forward.
Yeah.
And I think in the end, if the people that are going to come along for the ride are going to be the people that you really, you know, hope.
Mm-hmm. That cult following.
Well, yeah, and the people that are going to really truly get what journey you're on.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, you can't, like, there's people that love the Mercy Brothers that didn't necessarily dislike my last record. I mean, it was a different thing.
Yeah.
And you just attract different things whenever you put out a new project.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was willing to completely rewrite the whole script on it.
Cool. So sometime this year.
Sometime this year. It's a
Okay.
pretty crazy record. I mean, it's unlike any. If you like the Mercy Brothers and you like the last record I did, it's not even the same. It doesn't even sound like the same guy.
Well, if you touch on a little bit of how that process is, we talked a little bit off camera earlier about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, when it came up that this was going to happen, Spencer Gibb and I were talking, and I said, look, you know, I'm gonna write the same 3 songs. I think Mick Jagger or somebody said every artist has 3 songs that they just write over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, that's basically it.
Yeah.
And that becomes your style. That becomes who you are as an artist. So, I mean, I had my batch of songs that I submitted to Spencer, and one of the things Spencer said was, well, do you want to make a Faces record, like a Rod Stewart, Ron Wood early Faces sounding record? And I said, actually, no. I want to do something that sounds unlike anything I've ever done.
Yeah.
And he came correct with that,
Something
for
fresh,
sure.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. And it's dangerous, and I like that. It, you know, I mean, I hope people love it.
Yeah.
If they don't love it, it needed to be done.
Yeah.
You know?
Cool. Well, we're hanging out with Kevin Sekhani. New record coming out sometime this year. Make sure y'all check it out. I'm Hoyt.
I'm Corey.
And this is Kevin.
Thank y'all for having me.
Till next time, appreciate you coming.
Thank you very much.
Y'all give a
Thank
hoot
you.
and a holler to a coot and a collar. Have a great day.